Hello Flash Humans and welcome to the tech review of the FV4202, the tier 10 Hesh machine. Now this thing has one gun exactly. The tier 6 Cromwell starts off pretty well with solid 2000 DPM, 145mm penetration, 160 alpha damage, solid accuracy, aim time, 8 degrees of gun depression, very strong mobility, higher than that of the next three vehicles, however lower than that of the FV4202, and armor that doesn't exist. The Comet doesn't really step up that much in penetration, not even in premium penetration, which is very sad. However, the DPM goes up by 42%, which is nice. It also then gains 4 more degrees of gun depression up to 12 and gets slightly more accurate and gets a bit slower. And the armor is actually stronger on this one. It does have turret armor, however, no hull armor whatsoever. Same goes on with the Centurion Mark 1, which reduces DPM, however, increases the alpha damage to 190. And you have a higher penetration here as well, and even more accurate again. But we go down to 10 degrees of gun depression and reduce the mobility for the lowest of the line, and the traverse speed as well. The armor on the turret is somewhat okay, it's fairly fine, however, hull armor doesn't exist. Same with the Centurion Mark 7-1, very solid turret armor, no hull armor whatsoever. And again, we do go down in DPM by a bit, however, this vehicle has one gun that you should use, and that is the Hesh Gun. Same with the tier 10. The tier 10 has one singular gun. The other one does not exist. And both of these guns have very high penetration with their Hesh rounds with the HE, which means calibrated should be used. And 268 is about just fine enough. And then on the premium rounds, you have the Hesh ammunition. Now, accuracy is very strong on these again. Good dispersion values, 10 degrees of gun depression, which is always very lovely. And while the Centurion isn't really that fast, the FV4202 is incredibly mobile in terms of the effective powder weight ratio and the traverse speed. And then let's now have a look at the armor of the FV4202 as well, because, well, for most of them, well, the tier 7 to the tier 9, it's solid turret, no hull. The armor of this thing is a bit difficult. Now, we'll start off with the hull, 300mm, 350mm at the front if you shoot at it straight. So that is very, very strong armor here on the front plate. Lower plate's a weak spot as always. The sides are 50mm, which means you can get some bounces and absorptions from the side. You also have the 6mm screen right here outside of the tracks, which means heat rounds and HE rounds will not be effective against this vehicle's side. However, if you shoot up here, they can be. And the turret is a bit of a different story. You do have okay-ish angles on the turret, however the armor isn't really that thick, which means you want to make sure to wiggle this thing as much as you can to make sure that the enemy hits, ideally, one of the side of the turret where you can bounce off. However, if you hit the center right here, it's very easy to pen. Obviously a cupola on top as well. That isn't really that visible with 10 degrees of gun depression, but you can still get pens straight in the face. And we'll get into the gameplay, obviously starting at the Cromwell. Now, this is a very solid tier 6. I mean, it's a tier 6. You won't be playing it for that much, but for that, it is definitely fine. However, it will get somewhat worse later on. Now, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and special thank you to my channel members that keep supporting this type of content. Now, the Cromwell, 160 alpha damage, which is fine for tier 6. Nothing outrageous there. It's a very, very standard factor there. It even works somewhat well in tier 7 games, which can't be said for some of the higher tier tanks, but we'll get into that later. So, at this point, you have a tank that has very, very good mobility, however, absolutely zero armor. So, later, we'll trade that for a tiny bit more armor, but still not much. Now, this vehicle is best when it's not being shot at. Pretty much any tank is good at that, when it's not being shot at while you get shot. And you can use the excellent mobility of this vehicle, just like this, to get around enemy tanks and then get sneaky shots from the side, which is very nice, and that's pretty much what you have to do. Now, 8 degrees of gun depression on this thing, yeah, is not really great, because obviously the Cromwell B also exists, and that vehicle is obviously quite a bit better with 12 degrees of gun depression, and therefore this thing does lag quite a bit behind there. However, for a tech tree tank like this, tier 6, it's fine enough. You're not going to be missing out on much, and it will be just about fine. Just all it has to be, really. It's not horrible, it's not great, it'll do its job. It's reasonably accurate, does have solid penetration for its tier, and it can somewhat beat itself as well. Ideally, you want to use a camouflage, because if you don't use a camouflage, I will immediately assume that you're not a great player. So, fool me, use a camo. I mean, it's a very easy indicator. Now, the Comet is shit for most parts. Now, the penetration doesn't go up at all. However, the DPM and the gun depression do. You still have 160 alpha damage, which means that in a tier 6 game, it will work just about fine, which is what it's supposed to be, and that is amazing. In a tier 6 game, you can do quite well. However, in a tier 8 game, this thing is absolutely hopeless and useless, which is not very nice, and which is kind of like the Annihilator as well, but not as OP in the lower tier. So, you have 12 degrees of gun depression, which is absolutely amazing. 2,800 DPM, so you have a very solid gun here. However, the problem of that is you have to peek every 3 seconds to make this gun worthwhile. With armor that, it's there, but not very good there. It's not light tank armor, however, it's not good armor either. It has some good parts to it. The gun mantlet's pretty strong. The size of the turret are pretty easy to pen. As you can see right here, I'm doing a lot of damage. I'm getting a lot of shots. 2,000 damage already in basically a minute. Obviously, I'm getting rushed by 2 tanks here and I'm gonna die. However, you can put out a lot of damage with this tank very quickly if you have the opportunity to do so. However, if you're actually trying to fight someone, most of the time it will end quite badly. And why do I take replays like that? Because I'm not going to play 20 battles, and because there is an, well, transfer of players from other servers that are not very skilled, unfortunately, happening. I'm not a very big fan of it, and as you can see on the minimap as well, it's happening. The heavy tanks are going to the bad side, which is not very nice. So, I don't know what's happening there. I'm playing a lot of CSGO, so I am not a big fan of the transfer of RU players to EU, because from what I know in CSGO, they like to talk a lot, but they don't play very well. That's my experience from Counter-Strike. So, and also they have no idea what English is, which is very sad. So, I hope that does go better in Blitz. However, well, it is Counter-Strike after all. Centurion 1 also does get better from the Comet. However, not by much. You have no hull armor. The mobility is fine enough. The turret is, again, gun mantlet solid. However, the rest of it, what is armor? So you can be penned there quite easily. It's also a very big tank, which means it's somewhat easy to shoot. 190 alpha damage only, which is not great for tier 8, obviously, and you will be out-traded by pretty much everything else. For the Centurion 5-1, it does work because the turret is actually armored. On this thing, it works semi-well. It can be a tank that can be played really well. I mean, it has been buffed a couple of updates ago. Probably a year ago at this point. So, it was worse before. Now it's fine enough to grind through it. This is one of those vehicles that you'll play, you'll grind through it, and they never look at it again. That's pretty much how this vehicle works. However, it'll do just about fine at that. And it'll do, pretty much. And there's nothing really special about it. It's a bit less good than something like a Pershing or a Pantera. However, it's not a Panther 2, so that's already something. And then we go up another tier, and we go up to a 105mm gun with Hesh ammunition. Now, Hesh works the exact same as HE in World Tanks Blitz, just with higher penetration. And with me having over 100 million credits, I just load Hesh only. That's obviously not recommended. Now, this vehicle and the FV4-202 also have another option of playing a gun that has heat rounds as premium. However, if you would play the tanks with those guns, there is absolutely no point where you should get these vehicles. You can get the Patton, you can get an E50M. You'll have a better experience there. These vehicles are made for the Hesh rounds. If you don't use the Hesh rounds, you're playing them wrong. And you should pick a different tech tree. Now, obviously, the problem with that is that you don't quite have all the premium penetration that you might need if you're not such a great player, which means this is more of a advanced player's tech tree. And I definitely wouldn't recommend it to a beginner, because obviously, with the lack of premium penetration, you have 268 standard penetration, which especially for tier 9 against tier 8 is great. However, at tier 10, that is very much lacking. However, you have the 230mm of Hesh pen. Definitely use calibrated for that. Hesh and calibrated go along very well, are very much needed with each other. Now, 8.3 seconds reload might not seem too great, but that's very standard for its tier. And if you do have a lot of easy targets in front of you, then it is going to be very easy to shoot the Hesh rounds that do a lot of damage. However, this guy has the spore liner, so it won't do that much more for the most part. So this tank is fine the way it is. It's solid enough. It can be great in the right hands as well. However, you have to be aware that you don't want to fight any E75s, VKBs, all those kind of things frontally. As long as you don't do that, you will be just about fine. And the Hesh, it's going to penetrate a lot of tanks, especially medium tanks. You can pen the front of some medium tanks. You can, for example, pen the lower plate of a 60 TP, as we can see later. So the Hesh rounds are extremely good. However, you will still need to know how to use them correctly. The best way to learn that is just learn it by trying. You know, switch the Hesh. Can it pen? If it can pen, shoot. If it can't pen, go back to the AP, shoot the AP. That's very easy way, very straightforward. There's no secret to it. It just takes a bit of practice and a bit of intelligence to think about what you're actually doing. And now we move up to the big one, the FV422, the crown jewel of this tech tree, and the only one that actually makes this tech tree worth grinding, in my opinion. Because the Cromwell's good. The Comet's blech. The Centurion is blech -1. The 7-1 is solid and fine. This thing can be an absolute monster. You get a quite large step up in DPM. You can go up to 4,000 DPM with the Hesh rounds against pretty much most medium tanks and also some heavy tanks. Not mouses, but you can pen the sides and rear of a lot of heavy tanks with this vehicle. Sheridan is a very special case. All that what you see around the outside, you see those two tiny lines on the side. That's spaced armor. You don't shoot HE at that. That is spacing, and it won't do any damage, which means Hesh only in the Sheridan's turret to make sure, or in the middle of the rear. That is where you should place the Hesh there. Now, the C3, obviously he's trying to get at me. I know the Progetto's there, so I'm going to just bait him. I'm going to put 91 damage of Hesh into his top, because, I mean, it'll do just about. And at this point, 2,300 damage in 2 minutes, which is nice. And at this point, side of a 50% heavy. Hesh, straight through. It's beautiful. And again, to learn the Hesh, all you're going to do, switch to it, try it. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. That's trial and error is the best thing you can do in Blitz. And find your own playstyle. Find your own ways to do very good at it. However, there are obviously a lot of things that you shouldn't do at all. Like, for example, go towards the A-cap circle on this map. That is a very, very bad idea, and I will laugh at you for it. So, yeah, but for the most part, a lot of the fine, tiny things are either luck or just find it out by trial and error, and it will just work fine. Now, a mouse, again, you don't want to brawl that. However, you can pen it. 268 AP. It's just about fine enough. And at the end of this game, you have an IS-7 that had never participated in the game. You don't want to shoot Hesh at the side of an IS-7, but you can very much shoot it at the rear. And a bonus of HE and Hesh is that it does do more module damage, because obviously it does more damage. So it is a lot easier to set vehicles on fire and to get hammer racks. Just like that. And obviously, we'll also go into another battle. Which in this game, the enemy team has made the amazing mistake of going to the bad side of the map, which is always very lovely, always very much appreciated, because that just makes it so much easier to win. And now, obviously, the E4 has sat right in their way, and that's not what you're going to do. If you have an enemy team in the city, you let them rot there, you fire at them from all the sides. If they try to get out, you just shoot them in the face. You don't try to go in there and fight them. Let them sit there by themselves. They'll work it out. The worst thing you can do is try and get in there and fight. That's not going to work. So, you sit outside, you see, are they going to come out? And if they do come out one by one, easy kills. If they don't come out, well, you just shoot every time they try to peek between the houses. Boom. Now, this WZ121 doesn't quite know that I have a gun with 4,000 DPM, and that's the lovely thing about this vehicle, that if you shoot at the sides or the rear of even well-armored tanks, you can get 4,000 DPM and pretty much have the highest DPM at tier 10, which is just absolutely beautiful. Even an E100 side, heshable, very easily heshable. That's the beauty of this vehicle, the absolute insane damage output it can produce. And the armor angles are quite funky as well, which means if you don't quite know how this vehicle works in terms of the armor profile, it's very easy to not pen it. The upper plate is very well angled, very strong. The turret is somewhat reasonably well angled and reasonably thick as well, so it can be pretty difficult to pen it. So, is this vehicle worth picking up? Absolutely, if you're a bit of an advanced player. First, I would get an E50M. If you do well with the E50M, then I would recommend trying this one. Or, if you want something even more challenging, the Leopard 1. So, that's how I would handle this. I'd get the E50M first, and then see if that works. Then this can be a very solid second option as well. Now, the 4005, some people do call this vehicle OP, and I have done 4202 damage right there. What an amazing coincidence. Love that. It's just YouTuber luck, you know, that you do 4202 damage in a 4202. 60 TP lower plate. It works with Hesh, just about. Didn't shoot Hesh there, though. However, it would work at this point. Don't really care, though. I'm up 5k damage. He can't kill me. And I'll have a great time. And he's also reloading as well. At this point, I know he's finished reloading, so I'm not going to peek. And that's about it for this vehicle. It's very solid. Definitely worth picking up. However, it does require a bit of advanced skill, which I definitely recommend you to have anyway. And you will probably also need a lot of patience in the coming months. However, this is a very fun tank and it can make the game a lot more enjoyable. And I definitely recommend picking it up if you're already a bit of an advanced player. And if you want something nice for your garage, then this vehicle can definitely be worth it. However, be wary of the Comet and the Centurion 1. They're not that amazing. They can be quite challenging, and they can be very annoying. However, the Centurion 7-1 and this one are great. So thank you for watching. See you next one. Goodbye!